The RetroTINK 4K has received amazing reviews, but what about retro PC gaming? We will be testing Windows 98 and MS-DOS. We are starting testing with Windows 98 and DVI, connecting straight into the HDMI input. For MS-DOS and VGA, that is covered a little bit later in the video. GeForce 4 and GeForce FX cards are very popular, so are Radeon cards from the 9000 and the X800 series, and most of them have DVI. Our first system is an Athlon 64 with a GeForce FX 5200. I just turned it on and here is the image. Now what you're seeing here is there's a bit of double scaling going on. So the GeForce card scales everything before loading the driver to 720p or 1080p. And then the RetroTINK scales it to 4K. But here, as soon as the driver is loaded, the RetroTINK does all the scaling. So here we are on the desktop and we have a very retro-friendly resolution, 640 by 480 with a beautiful image. Let's click on Advanced. You want to make sure that the refresh rate is set to 60 Hz, but we can also go as high as 75. Now I want to go into the menu and show you a couple of settings to do with the scaling. And we have to go down here to scaling mode. By default, it's set to autofill, and that's probably the setting most of us want to use. If we click left, we can also use the integer scaling, which is also of interest to many of you. The other scaling modes, we've got proportional, freeform, and then back to autofill. Integer. I'm going to leave it on autofill. I'm just going to move the on-screen display to the right side so we can see it a little bit easier. And then we go back out and I want to show you the processing options for the interpolation. Out of the box, the default interpolation is bilinear sharp. This uses a combination of integer scaling and bilinear filtering to give you a really crisp image while using the entire vertical height of your screen. I'm going to cycle through the other ones and you will see how the sharpness changes, especially with the bilinear soft. Here we've got bicubic, Lanczos 2, or Lanczos, I don't know how to pronounce that one, 3. And here we've got nearest neighbor and back to bilinear sharp. So this is beautiful. With a normal monitor, you don't get access to such options. Let's have a look at some of the other supported resolutions. This is everything default out of the box. I've loaded the default settings, nothing custom. It's picking up 800 by 600 just fine. Let's have a look at 1024 by 768. This one is also working fine. And then of course the 1280 by 1024, that one is also working fine. There's a button here on the remote control to show some stats. If you ever run into an issue, this is very handy to take a photo and share with whoever you're discussing the issue with. I want to take a moment to thank Mike G for sending the scaler to the channel. He told me that the main target for the scaler is definitely consoles and home computers, but he would love to see more coverage to do with the retro PC. However, out of the box, a few resolutions, they don't work quite right. This one here, 1152 by 864. Here, the scaler doesn't quite know what to do. And we have a similar issue with the 1280 by 960, which is one of my favorite resolutions because it retains the 4:3 aspect ratio while still giving you a lot of detail. And also we're missing the 1600 by 1200 resolution. When we use a scaler with a computer, the scaler basically acts as if it's a monitor. It uses something called edit, which is a list of supported resolutions and refresh rates. Because the RetroTINK 4K has an SD card, we can modify this edit information. This is the contents of the SD card, and look at that, there is some information about custom edit. It is right here, so it's explaining we can put a edit.bin file into the root directory of the SD card. There we go. I posted a custom edit file onto the SD card. Now I got this file from tech support from a capture card company. I struggled capturing at 1600 by 1200 over DVI, and that worked for me. So let's see if it also works for the RetroTINK. We are back. This time we've loaded the custom edit file. Let's click on settings and try these resolutions again. 1152 by 864. See, this is working now. The same goes for the 1280 by 960. This is now also working, and we should also have the 1600 by 1200. It's right here. Let's see what that looks like. Beautiful. So yeah, the bottom line is there's a lot of tweaking that you can do, and us as a retro PC community, yeah, we can exchange different edit files and learn from the experiences. Another alternative is a device like this one from StarTech. It's an edit emulator, and there is a little dial here where we can set the resolution, and this goes between the graphics card and the scaler. Now I've booted the machine with the StarTech edit device in between the Retro PC and the RetroTINK, and we can see here the identification of the monitor has changed. And also I've configured the StarTech device to 720p, so this is now the highest resolution. Now 720p and 1080p, these resolutions are awesome in the sense they integer scale perfectly into 4K. And there are some nice little tricks we can do. So this applies a lot to Windows XP retro gaming, but also for Windows 98. If we click on Advanced, go to our GeForce driver. Not all video cards can do this, but many of the GeForce cards and also the Radeon cards. Click on Device Settings, Device Adjustments, and then we can configure centered output. So the video driver, the video card, will now scale the images to 720p using centered scaling, and then the RetroTINK does the rest, taking it from 720p to 4K, and then you get an image like this. So this just gives you, yeah, another angle of attack to get the most out of your image. Out of the box, the RetroTINK 4K can connect to 4K displays, 1440p, 1080p and 480p. But what if I want to use a PC monitor, an older one? This is an 18-inch model with a resolution of 1366 by 768. We are back on the SD card and we need this folder here, mode lines. There are 4 text files as well as a instructions document. Let's have a look. RetroTINK 4K custom output mode lines. So each of these text files, they correspond to a button on the remote control. For example, res 1 to res 4. And then to actually configure the resolution, we need to click on this website. So this is a timings calculator. So my monitor has a resolution of 1366 by 768. Let's scroll down and we get these custom mode lines. Now, which one of these will work? CVT and DMT, these are older ones. I believe this is the one that worked for me. So it's a bit of trial and error. So you grab, copy paste that line, go back here, open the text file, paste it, cross it off and save it. And yeah, let's put the SD card into the RetroTINK and see what happens. I have some photos here of the monitor displaying 1024 by 768 with 1 by 1 pixel mapping and looking absolutely beautiful. So I tried a few other monitors. This is a 19-inch monitor with 1280 by 1024 resolution, quite popular in the retro PC community. Unfortunately, this one wouldn't work. This 24-inch also didn't work. It's a Samsung with a resolution of 1920 by 1200. It's a shame because we can display 1600 by 1200 as well as 800 by 600 pixels. I reached out to Mike and basically he said, well, in terms of output devices, it's really geared for HDMI devices and not DVI. So if you're planning on using an older PC monitor, make sure it has a HDMI port. That was digital. Let's check out the VGA input. We're staying with Windows 98, but then moving on to MS-DOS. We are still using the GeForce FX. We need to change the input to RGB HV, and then let's fire up the Retro PC, and here is our signal. So straight away we can tell that the image is cut off on the left side. The colors are also a little bit off, and you might be able to tell that the image is a little bit fuzzy or not 100% stable. There's a bit of flickering going on. There are quite a few adjustments we need to make. The most important and the most difficult one is getting the phase right. For that we need a test pattern. I've created some test patterns ages ago, which helps me with capturing for the channel. Let's make this full screen, and then we go into the menu, Advanced Settings, go down to Acquisition, RGB, and see this line here, samples per line. We need to change that number. The number we need to use is 1056. If you run a Google search for VESA monitor timings, you will find this PDF document. So it shows here all these different resolutions. Let's go for 800 by 600 at 60 Hertz. We have to go to page 25. There you go, 800 by 600 at 60 Hertz. And the number we're looking for is the total horizontal pixels, 1056. Another way is using an online video timings calculator. Let's enter the horizontal and the vertical resolution, and then under DMT, horizontal total 1056. So for 800 by 600, 1056 is the correct samples per line. So I'm pressing the left button on the remote control to dial that in, and you can see the image changes, those vertical bars. The closer we get, the bigger. See how big they are now, and as we get closer they start to slowly disappear, and there you go. And if I keep going, those bars come back. So it's a nice visual test to make sure the samples per line is correct. Okay, we can get out of here, and now we're almost done. We can stay at the desktop. There are 3 buttons on the remote control that we need to press. Auto phase is the first one that adjusts the phase to the signal. If the samples per line is not correct, then the auto phase will be hit and miss and it will not work correctly. The next thing we need to do is get the cropping right. There's a button aux2. It automatically crops the image, but if you want to double check that the cropping is correct, you can do it manually by checking out that all the pixels are correct. It's doing a good job at the automatic cropping, I must say. And the last one, we need a patch of white on the screen. Let's just open Paint, and then we press the auto gain button. That adjusts the colors, and we're done. We now have a beautiful, perfect calibrated VGA image. Now we need to do this for every resolution. I'll show you one more, the 640 by 480. That one is a little bit different. Let's open the test pattern, and we go back into the menu, Advanced Settings, Acquisition, RGB. The correct samples per line is 800. However, if I try to enter 800, it stops at 1024. That's the lowest it can go. So I need to use a decimating factor of 2, and then I go to 1600, and that should get us the 800. Again, we can see how the bars are getting bigger and bigger, and the closer we get to the 800, look at this number, that should be close to 800. The closer we get, boom, there you go. Okay, we can go out of here, close this off, Remember the buttons, aux2 to get the cropping right, then auto phase to get the phase right, and then we open something with a patch of white. I like to use paint. Press the auto gain button. And boom, there you go. And that might be a good opportunity to click on the profiles and save it as a new. There you go. But what about a Voodoo 2? We are back with a more period correct retro PC. It's a Pentium 3 with 256 megabytes of RAM. We've got an S3 video card for the desktop and a Voodoo 2 for 3D acceleration. It's a new video card, so let me dial in the settings again. So 1056 for the samples per line. Next we press the auto phase button, followed by auto crop and auto gain to adjust the colors. And what I recommend here is using different profiles. So say for example the S3 video card, let's use profile 2, and then we have a second profile which we use for the Voodoo 2. The challenge with the Voodoo 2 is, well, it's a pass-through 3D only video card. We can't load the test pattern to calibrate the image. So I'm hoping someone out there in the retro PC community knows a little bit about programming, knows their way around an SDK, and yeah, can write a tool that basically displays the test pattern in 3D in glide mode, OpenGL, and direct 3D. So the samples per line, we can only guess that this is the same. Let me check the refresh rate. We can see here. So the vertical refresh rate is 60 Hertz. So the sample rate should be the same, but we can't 100% confirm it. A white patch, well, we can still press the gain button. There's some white around the Epic Mega Games, but it's not as perfect as I would like. Let's try the phase. And now let's press the crop, aux2, see if it got it right. Let's get out here. Maybe this one is better for calibrating. I can see on the right hand side it's missing a few parts. Yeah, that looks better. Okay, that looks pretty good. And then we make sure in the profiles we save this as profile 2. Here we go, Voodoo 2 in all its glory, playing some Unreal with the 3dFX glide render, looking absolutely beautiful. And we are back on the desktop, and you can see all the settings are now messed up because we're using the profile from the Voodoo 2. So we go back to profiles, load from file, and we load profile number 1, and everything is back to normal. And now it's time to check out DOS gaming, one of my favorite aspects of retro PC gaming. So I've downgraded the CPU to a Celeron. The video card is now a Matrox, I believe it's a Millennium 2. They have a really sharp VGA output signal, and the RAM is also downgraded. Let's go with extended memory, and let's go into games, and let's use stunts. Let me just turn off the music. There you go. Stunts is a really good game for calibrating the 320 by 200 DOS resolution. Press escape here. We get to this screen, press escape again. And now the game will pause. So it's asking us if we want to quit. We're just gonna pause here. So DOS is really interesting. The games run at a 320 by 200 resolution, but the video card, the VGA video card, double scans it to 640 by 400. That means we can use the same sample rate as 640 by 480. So we go into the, actually a couple of things we can do first. We can press aux2 to center the image. We can press the gain button. There's lots of white in the screen, so the colors are now nice and clear. Now we go into the menu, go into advanced settings, acquisition RGB, set the decimation factor to 2, and we need to lower the samples per line to 800. There you go. And now we can press the autofocus button. Off it goes, and we have a beautiful calibrated image. We can apply some CRT masks to more closely mimic the look of a CRT monitor. So it's already in action here. You might notice that the image is a little bit dimmer. That is the downside. To do this, go into the menu, advanced settings, processing effects. We have loaded a medium slot mask, and then we can adjust the strength. Somewhere in between is probably acceptable. We're not losing too much of brightness, and we still can see the effect quite clearly. There's another one I like under RGB masks, aperture grill dense. That's also quite fitting. This one might need a little bit more, -3. And yeah, it does give it that little subtle CRT magic inside of the pixels that you get with a real CRT monitor. So it's something you can play around with to improve the image. Let's talk about EGA and Scanlines. So the EGA look is totally different compared to VGA. Remember, under VGA, the 320 by 200 resolution is double scanned to 640 by 400. Well, with a real EGA computer, that wasn't the case, and you would see nice, lovely scan lines. Now, the RetroTINK has something really amazing. We can go into the scaling, and there's a vertical prescale. So if we set that to half, we now have 200 scan lines, and we can now go into the effects and turn on the scan lines. We can play around with the strength setting here, and we can mimic the look of a classic EGA monitor. That looks pretty nice. Now let's see if we can combine that with a CRT mask. Something like this. Beautiful. And there's one more thing I want to show you. So let's say under DOS games 320 by 200, you've calibrated the image, everything looks pixel perfect. But then you quit to DOS, and yeah, look at that. It looks really blurry and not just, yeah, it just doesn't look right. So what's going on here is this is a text mode. It uses a horizontal resolution of 720 by 400. So that means the vertical resolution is identical with the DOS games, and that confuses all sorts of capture cards and monitors. So I will show you my method for dialing in the text mode under MS-DOS, and then we will use profiles to switch back and forth. So I will show you the profile thing first. So profile number 5, let's say this is for playing DOS games. I will assign that to button 5, and then we will create a new profile, number 6, that will be for DOS text mode. And then on the remote control, we can just hit either 5 or 6 and switch between these profiles. So I entered a bunch of A's into the DOS command line. We go into the advanced settings, acquisition RGB component, and remember the samples per line was 800 for the 640 by 400 resolution. We now got 720 horizontal pixels, so that should be an additional 80. So let's see if 880 gets us there. And if not, then maybe it's a little bit more, but we should be able to dial it in nicely. So here we are at 880, and we can see it's not ideal. You have to be looking really carefully. The A's need to be perfect. So, and now it's just a hunting game of pressing right until every single A is without any distortion. There you go. I think I found it at 908.5. If I go back a few, I can see some distortion on the right side, but this seems, yeah, every letter is clear. If I go one more to the right, I can see some distortion. So let's go with this one. Let's have a final look. Everything looks clear. I'm in Monkey Island 2, so I press 5 on the remote control to load the profile for 320 by 200 DOS games. And then I quit to MS-DOS. You can see the text is all messed up. I press 6 on the remote and now everything is clear. And also a few words about high refresh rates, because MS-DOS games, most of them run at 70 Hertz. The monitor I'm using here is a 1440p monitor. It supports 144 Hertz and FreeSync. Now, I had to add a custom mode for this resolution. I mapped it to the Res 1 button on the remote control, and then everything worked. You can enable FreeSync in the menu, and then we're getting 70 Hertz, silky smooth DOS gaming. Remember, the HDMI port is version 2.0, so it can't handle 4K at 70 Hertz. There's a little bit of a hack by using a 4:3 ratio version of 4K. That does work at 70 Hertz, but not all TVs, not all monitors support that resolution. So for DOS gaming with higher refresh rates, I would recommend a 1440p monitor just to be sure that it's supported. So guys, what is the verdict? Well, not just for consoles or home computers, even for the retro PC, the RetroTINK 4K is hands down the best scaler that is available. The price is very high. I mean, we're talking about $750 US, but you are getting a product that has a number of features and a level of quality that has never been achieved before. Worse is the situation to do with supply. There simply is no stock. The first batch sold out straight away, and from what I'm reading in the Discord server and from other online sources, the demand simply outstrips the supply by far. With the hobby of retro PC gaming, well, you know there are a wide range of video cards, and there's no way I'm able to test every single combination, but I've covered quite a bit, and you should have a good idea of what this scaler can do, what the quality is like, and most of the features that are of interest to using this with a retro gaming PC. As always, I will pay attention to the comment section, so if there's any burning questions you have, leave them down below. Also, visit the Discord server if you're interested in learning more, or if you just want to stay in touch with the discussions that we're having on there. It's really fascinating. The weekends are very busy. Sometimes I wake up in the morning and there are another 200 messages. So there's definitely more to come. And that's why I don't want to dig too deep into this video, because it's a moving target. There will be new firmware versions. Even as I'm speaking now on the Discord server, there are tools and utilities being developed. So it's an exciting time. So there you go. All in all, the RetroTINK 4K scaler gets a huge thumbs up. It's a game changer, not just for consoles and home computers, also for us, for the retro PC enthusiasts. And that's it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you soon with another one.